Hi everyone and welcome back to Marketing Talks with Ivan. I'm your host Ivan and welcome back to an exciting new episode. Today I have a very dear friend of mine. Anastasia, would you like to say hi to the viewers out there?
Hi. Thank you for inviting me. It's such a pleasure for me to be here and chat with you.
So today's guest is someone who actually defines what it means to be an adaptive marketer. She started her journey back in Ukraine, where she quickly realized that international economics was actually not the kind of thing that she wanted to pursue further. But by the age of 18, she was already supervising teams in high pressure call centers, right? At the time when the global pandemic hit. From there, she moved into the world of startups, performing deep dive, high end market research for different kinds of global markets, translating complex data into international growth. She then pursued her master's at ESCP, and by the way, that's the place where we both met as well. She has sharpened the skills at one of the world's biggest and largest beauty companies out there in the product development department and is currently navigating the corporate landscapes of London. Please welcome her to this podcast. Anastasia, are you excited? I want to see a genuine reaction from your side.
Yes, I am. Thank you so much. Yeah.
So, Anastasia, I've seen your journey. I want to go back, let's go back to the Big Bang Theory, where it all started. You studied economics back in Ukraine, and you were not quite fond of it, let's say. Why did the supply and demand graphs fail to capture your interest compared to the real world?
Yeah, so I started back in 2018, and my first class was economics theory. And from there, it was very visible for me that it's all about like theoretical knowledge, fundamental knowledge, all the books. And I'm the learner that gets everything from the practice, from the real examples. And I was really liking it. And so I actually needed something where I can see how companies works, how economics works. And that's why like I started my job when I was 17, like in a contact center. There I learned a lot about like communication, about the corporate structures, how kind of even the small companies work, like how everything is structured about management of organizations, all of this. So it was quite new for me, and also like it was increasing my professional skills, how to talk to people, how to read the room. So yeah, it was really kind of interesting experience for being just 17 years old and just starting to learn what you can do in this life. And also like uni was helping me to get the knowledge of economies, of the enterprises, all of this. But again, I think that experience helped me to learn more about the leadership, management, all the soft skills I guess are there. And after a year of just being an agent and answering all the emails, calls, everything, I kind of step up. I was always curious about what my supervisor at the time was doing, and I'm kind of personal, very organized person myself. So it was a jump for me, just being 18 and being like the leader of the team, and sometimes like, can I talk to a manager? And I was that manager. So it was cool. And again, developing strong soft skills when it comes to leading the team and being their support. Because like talking to clients every day can be exhausting, and some clients can be demanding. And of course, like it's part of the job, and they just needed someone who can help them to navigate any issues, troubles that we were facing on everyday basis. So this is how I started it, and I was doing it for a few years of my university, and it was cool to actually mix it up, being busy all the time. So yeah, this was my kind of first experience.
That's actually very interesting. And the fact that you already started working at the age of 17 and like even becoming a supervisor at the age of 18 is really remarkable. How did that experience, like from a very young age, like managing people and all, change the way that you have seen this kind of environments?
It helped me a lot to see how the companies works. Like I kind of was more prepared than my classmates who didn't have this experience, because when it comes to some topics about like management organizations, I could see, okay, so my manager is here in this practical organizational structures. So I'm here and I'm communicated to those departments. So it was really visible and it was that practical experience. And also we were client-faced environments, so sometimes we were exposed to some of the management decisions that they were making based on the performance. And also about the performance, one of my responsibilities as a supervisor was to tracking the KPIs of the agents. Sometimes, like we needed to work on something on the quality of giving responses. Yeah.
So, Anastasia, something really interesting that you mentioned, that it was all about client facing. What are the different kinds of KPIs that you actually dealt with during your role as a supervisor?
So mainly KPIs was to when it comes to evaluation of the calls like client satisfaction or NPS score. So those were the KPIs.
So, Anastasia, that was a really interesting take to the question. And I'm glad, like, to be honest, from your experience as well, also, I can understand it was you were able to even understand and even read the room as well through this kind of experiences as well.
Yeah, yeah, you're right.
So, Anastasia, I understand that you moved into the startup in order to do market research for very massive markets out there and for different kinds of countries. For someone who is listening to this podcast, I know sometimes when you're doing research, research could mean a very broad perspective, and sometimes people tend to get lost even while they start an initial research. Since you have been in the business in terms of doing research, market research, and all of those kinds of aspects, could you share like a template, or what are the key kind of metrics that you actually look for?
Yeah, so the COVID hits, and I had opportunity to join the edtech startup and do the research for their expansion in the massive markets like Brazil, Indonesia, and Mexico. It was very challenging for me because it was very new, but at the same time, it was that practical experience that I was looking for. And yeah, so we needed to understand the IT industry there and also IT education industry there to understand if there is actually it's growing or the market is big or small. So it was really important to know the trends in education, trends in IT, what companies presented there, is there any competitors for us, or it's absolutely new field for them. So yeah, we started analyzing the population of the country, also the how many people using internet in the country because it's massive countries. And for that, we were using some of the concepts and we needed to understand the market size, the population who actually studying tech skills. Is there demand for the learning tech skills, demand for new companies, and what the communication connection with general IT, and everything was really growing fast because COVID, everything is online. People wanted to learn more and more.
Understood. So you had to basically understand the digital landscape of these different kinds of countries, because each one of them is very distinct in a way.
Yeah, that's correct. And that's why we actually created the same template to analyze three of them. So we could compare it and then make the decision to which country pursue, where we can land.
So when you're doing this kind of research, each of these countries are very different and distinct in a manner. So do you have like a uniform template, or do you try to improvise accordingly based on the market?
Yeah, so for them, we had one template so we could actually compare them. We needed to evaluate the market size, if it's big and there are many players involved, and also great presence of IT companies, or if it's really small and people don't know anything about IT, there is no demand, no people who want to pursue their career in development and IT itself.
So, Anastasia, I remember during our initial discussions of this podcast, you also told me some very interesting topics as well, like TAM, SAM, and SOM concepts to understand market size. Could you actually briefly explain those kind of concepts to the audience?
Yeah, so TAM is total available market. So this is like the biggest number that we can get to understand, like as I mentioned before, if the market is big or small. For us, it was a learning market size. We needed to understand if people actually learning online, if they're willing to learn, and if there are company presented. So next one is SAM. It's a service available market. So this is kind of the portion of those bigger market that we can enter. And for us, it was kind of number of specific courses or schools who actually provide such services as us, IT education. And next one is serviceable obtainable market. So this is our number that if it actually gonna be manageable for us to go on that market, and if there are people who would buy our services. So this is was the number of people who graduated from university and would willing to pursue their career in IT.
And how did you handle challenges of researching markets that were new to you?
It was very interesting for me to deep dive into it, to learn also not about technical or not about the numbers, but also about the cultures, how people use internet in Brazil and Indonesia. It's absolutely two different worlds. And yeah, it was interesting also because of the language, since in Brazil it's Portuguese, in Mexico it's Spanish, and it's quite similar to English, we can say so. And it was easy to navigate it and sometimes translate, sometimes understand something. But when it comes to Indonesia, it was like a new language, and sometimes I needed like to spend some time to understand how to navigate the websites. But again, my curiosity actually helped me a lot to deep dive and found answers.
That's really nice to hear. And you've had quite a global journey, I would say. I would say a pop star. So you went now from the startup to actually pursuing your masters at ESCP. How was the experience for you as well?
It was great. Also meeting a lot of people, moving to Madrid, nice time. And also during the school, we needed to prepare the master thesis. And it was that time for me when I was doing another research and I realized what my passion is, what I want to do in my life. It was really groundbreaking moment for myself to realize that I actually like the music and everything connected to it. And then I decided to write a thesis about customer preferences of the algorithm that Spotify is using. And it was great time to discover what work have done before on this. And AI, ChatGPT was not even there. So we are talking about late 2022 before it was launched. So it was actually interesting to go into understanding how AI and machine learning works before it became a mainstream. And yeah, it was super cool. During the research, I actually made some people to listen to the music and then evaluate it.
And after doing this research in terms of Spotify's algorithm, what was your conclusion as well?
Actually, end of my master thesis was saying that people don't really like what algorithm of Spotify provides to them. So it was the main conclusion that it was like 3 out of 5, so it wasn't enough. And I hope since then, it was a few years ago, they actually improved it and people enjoying more the recommended playlist that they see on their apps.
Understood. And then moving over to the next big phase of your journey is you moved into one of the largest beauty companies out there into the product development department. So going from a startup now into one of the largest companies out there, what was the first thing that came across your mind? How did you feel?
Actually, I felt really good being in international environment where it actually also fast paced when it comes to work, when it comes to changes. But at the same time, with this beauty company, we were working on a product that will be launched like in a few years scale. So we could see like our products just recently. And when I compare it to the startup, when, for example, I was doing research in a Q1 and then in late November, we were launching products there. So it was crazy, the timeline. But at the same time, it was really good experience, again, doing the research on trends, especially from Asia. Most of the beauty trends at that time were coming from there, as well as competitors, to see what they doing, how they present the products, and also the consumers. There, I was doing a lot of sentiment analysis from the comments of real users on TikTok and Instagram to understand and to help create the right product or improve the formula people were using.
And also, did you use sentimental analysis as well?
Yes, so I needed to analyze the comments from real people on TikTok and Instagram about how they're using the product, how they liking it, and if they want to change something so we can actually implement it.
Understood. So the feedback is very important in this kind of environments as well, especially when you're doing product development and all. Being close to the consumer is key here.
Yes, it is true. And I also think that the product development it's quite far from the consumers, but at the same time, such analysis, understanding the sentiment, understanding the preference is really important for creation itself. We can actually see if they liking the product or no, if they liking specific brands or specific colors of it.
Or even if there are gaps in the product as well, you can avoid it at a very early stage and improvise on the formula as well.
Yeah, or create something new from scratch if people didn't like something.
Exactly. Actually, that was a good point that you made. A very nice take to the question, I would say. So now you're in London. You started in outdoor advertising, dealing with physical billboards. What did that teach you about the corporate environment?
Yeah, so I moved to London and I kind of needed to start everything from scratch. And outdoor advertising actually helped me to learn a lot about the environment here, learn about the brand, the agencies that work here, and it actually helping me still to build my career here. And so I was receiving a lot of artworks from different brands. And I could actually see how they communicate, like their tone of voice, or how they use like tele or aircon just on advertising. So it was pretty cool to dip myself into this to learn a lot about the brands, how they operate, how they talk to the consumers.
Understood. And going back to the university a bit, you told me your interest is in music as such, and you've been networking heavily into music and different kinds of artists and all of this. So, could you tell me more about that?
Yeah, that's true. That's London is the greatest city to start career in music because all of the companies, big three labels represented here, as well as so many independent artists and independent agencies that starts to grow their companies and try to build something new out of the system. And it's really nice because networking is a big thing here and there are so many opportunities to meet people who work either in these big companies or in a tiny independent agencies. So it's city of opportunities as well, and I'm involved in the non-profit organization where I support as well female musicians and we're trying to promote their music in this competitive landscape of London scene.
And Anastasia, anyone who's listening to this podcast, what would you actually advise them on your journey?
What I recommend is actually to try everything. Say yes to every opportunity. You never know actually what skills or knowledge you can use in a 5 year scale or what skills you can bring to specific agency or company. I think like being having like diverse environment is really important as well. And also find people who have the same goal as you, find like-minded people, but at the same time always be ready to the challenges and to what life can bring you.
That's a very interesting take. And the fact that from your journey, what I really realized is each opportunity that you have taken part of is what molded you into the next big thing for you as well, if I would say.
Yeah, I can agree here because it's all kind of building like snowballing into this character that you see. And it's really nice to actually being able to use any of my past knowledge in my new opportunities as well.
And also, it builds the right kind of skills. Like at the time, maybe when, to be honest, when I was building my career as well, at 18, sometimes we also think to ourselves, maybe I don't realize the skill at that point. But when you reach maybe 27 and all of this, you're like, wow, I have built this skill over the past 10 years. I would put it as each brick along the way builds it into the perfect and sustainable structure.
Yeah, it's such a good metaphor about the bricks. Yeah, that's really true. You never know where you're gonna be in a 5, 10 years. You never know for which client or industry you're gonna work. And it's all about adaptability and it's all about transferable skills, knowing how to use them.
And one more interesting take is learning new skills is also important.
Yeah, trying to be on spot with all the trends that happening with AI, with social media. So yeah, keep learning.
Yeah, exactly. And what about music? Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of your posts on Insta as well. Like you're getting into that. Like I can see there's a lot of passion from your side as well into the music industry. Next thing I might see you as the next pop star.
I wish to be a pop star. I like to be behind the scenes. I like to be that support for female musicians that are out there. and sometimes helping them with admin knowledge that I have, and just being that support and see how they grow.
I'm glad to hear that. And to be honest, the main reason why I started this podcast in the first place is exactly for people like you. So you share your journey and people feel inspired by it. So I'm glad
Yeah.
to have you on this podcast as well. It was a really nice having a really good, solid conversation with you as well, Anastasia.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It was a great time.
Me too as well. So thank you so much, Anastasia. And to all the viewers out there, we'll see you in the next podcast and see you next time.
Bye.